quote to 43813. You don't get the dancing guy, you just get the car.
Prime Meridian Direct. Our insurance is all about you.
This is Jackie's Fist. This is Jackie's Boot. And for the month of February, eTV is the Jackie Channel.
You must have a death wish.
Well, isn't this a good start?
Friday Action Nights at 9 on E!
Thanks for joining us again as we continue on Sunrise this morning. Energy experts, thought leaders, ministers from different countries and other stakeholders are expected to gather in Sandton today for a two-day Africa Energy. Among the issues to be tackled is the socio-economic development within the African continent, and to discuss further the energy sector crisis. To talk more about the Africa Energy Indaba, we're joined in studio by Dave Wright from South African National Energy Association and also the head of energy at the National Business Initiative, Val Geen. You at home can be part of our discussion by calling us on 011-537-9337 or 9338. We're also on Facebook and Twitter for further commentary. Good morning and thanks very much for joining us. Dave, let's kick off with you. In terms of the Africa Energy Indaba, what is the main objective? Obviously, we're having these challenges that we're having as South Africa, but I'm sure things are totally different in other parts of the continent. Why are we having an Africa Energy Indaba in 2015?
I think the first thing to make, first point to make, is that this is not a one-off event. This is the 7th African Energy Indaba that's happening. It started in 2009, and the prime reason for it is really to bring African leaders from business, government and civil society together, ready to discuss and collaborate and shape energy solutions for Africa. I mean, there are many energy solutions out there in the world which you can't just cut and paste to make work in Africa. So the prime purpose of the Indaba really is to look at how do we take solutions which work elsewhere and look at how they can work in Africa. So it's not focusing specifically on the current issues, but trying to look at broader issues, longer term issues.
Now, Val, let's bring you in. Let's talk about, 7 years down the line, clearly, as much as we're not focusing on the current issues, but we use this kind of situation sort of prepare us for what is likely to happen. What have we learned and how are we addressing that in this year's Energy Indaba?
Well, I think the one key feature that's been brought into the Energy Indaba from last year, but more specific today, was the role of women in energy. I think in the South African context in particular, if we take the figure that was mentioned in the State of the Nation address last week, that there are 3 million households still without electricity, and women being perhaps the key breadwinners in those families, then the need for access to energy is still an important one. And with current demand and supply challenges, we've got to think about economic growth as well as socio-economic development. And so for me, this 7 years is a combination of what are the short, medium and long-term solutions. And I'm a great punter in terms of short-term solutions, at looking at energy efficiency. What can we do with the existing energy that we have? How can we use it in a different way? Why are we looking at the medium and longer-term solutions?
Can we just talk in terms of the role of South Africa in conjunction with the rest of the continent when it comes to the continent around energy?
I think South Africa is in a fortunate position compared to many other African countries. I mean, Val's correct in saying that there's still 3 million households in South Africa that don't have access to energy. But if you look at the percentage of our population, it's above 80%. Whereas there are other parts of Africa where the access to energy is much, much lower. Even in a country with good resources like Nigeria, the access to energy is below 50%. So in that regard, although we are having some serious problems of our own in South Africa with regard to power, we can still provide leadership and guidance and direction.
Is that the expertise that we're bringing into the conversation? I mean, let's look at some of the things that we discussed throughout the sessions. Val, if you can let us in on that.
I think we're bringing expertise from all fronts. So I don't think South Africa has the answer solutions. I think the rest of the continent has done quite a lot of good work on renewable energy, small power generation initiatives that we can learn from, and that I think our own energy future needs to be a mixed bag of energy options. And I think that's what we can take away from what other African countries bring. Because they haven't perhaps got established energy systems, they are perhaps leaping forward faster than us on some of the uptake of renewable energy. But on the other hand, they would like to be industrialized, and I think we've got lots of lessons to share from a much more industrialized nation.
Some may ask, Dave, and say that do we have an energy crisis or an energy management problem?
I think it depends on where you come from. I think it's a bit of both. I think for people in the street, it's definitely a crisis. But I think in terms of the big picture, it's probably a management issue. Decisions were unfortunately not made at a time when they needed to be made in order to give effect to providing power when it's required. One of the big challenges with the whole issue of electricity supply is that the lead times are usually quite long, especially for the big facilities like Medupi, Kasili, and so on. I mean, for the smaller projects like we've seen for the renewable energy programs, their turnaround time is a little shorter, and that's where this renewable energy program, which South Africa's run, which has been very successful, is starting to make itself felt.
Okay. All right. We also asked our viewers to share their thoughts on our Facebook page this morning. Faith is standing by with some of those commentary. We'll look at that and come back and continue our conversation around the Africa Energy Indaba, which is kicking off today in Sandton in Johannesburg.
Well, thank you very much, Penny. And of course, the question which we posed on Facebook is whether or not we think that moving in the right direction when it comes to addressing the energy crisis. And these are the various comments that have come out this morning. So let's start off with Ngwako saying, no, they're not moving in the right direction. They must come up with a solution that will solve the issue of the energy crisis. They did not know that they will come across the energy crisis some years ago, but failed to come with solutions to prevent any further damages. Dakalani just agreeing. They're saying, no, they are not moving in the right direction. Karabo, 2 weeks without water. Is that the right direction? Vito saying, addressing that they're on the right direction, but no action at all. Arthur Angry Bird saying we are going the right way compared to all African countries, not to Europe. Chris saying that I don't think so, but what Mr. President Zuma said last week, the SONA might work. We will just wait for implementation and take it from there. Kotato, not at all. We are moving sideways, according to him. Promise, not at all, because we wouldn't be communicating with you now without energy. So from me, it is a big no-no. Aubrey saying that as long as it's still ANC, continue to blame the apartheid, we are moving backward. Rolf saying I will be in at the Africa Energy Indaba. I hope to find solutions there. And Antonio saying not at all. You are drifting away and this will cause a huge problem and will cost lives for innocent people. And Kukara saying completely wrong. And very lastly, Zuleki saying an absolute no. So it appears as though the majority of comments are steering towards us not necessarily moving in the right direction. And maybe that is a question that will be posed right now in terms of exactly what is the solution at this point. But it is back to you in studio.
All right. Thanks, Faith, there for those Facebook comments. I'm sure you guys got to see on that. What direction are we moving in? Where are the answers? And in as much as we want to look into the future, but we have a situation that we need to deal with right now. Are these some of the issues will be tackled at the conference, and how so will those questions be answered?
I don't believe those specific questions are going to be answered, because I think the answer is very clear for us from a short-term perspective. That can be done other than manage the process as is being done with the whole load shedding and maintenance program which is being initiated. Unfortunately, the current problems we are suffering from in South Africa have to have a long-term solution. Val's reference to energy efficiency is perhaps one area where we can move quickly. And as the renewable energy program starts to come in, it's also going to provide a buffer. But what we are seeing right now is being managed in the best way it can be. And the Indaba isn't going to tackle these issues. The Indaba is going to be talking more about future challenges and future issues.
Is nuclear the solution, Val?
I think that lots of other parts of the world have pursued nuclear, and they've pursued it as a clean energy solution. remember that we also have to worry about carbon emission reduction. But for our current circumstances, I think as well, we need to look at the short and medium and the long term. So nuclear is not going to give us our immediate solution. Obviously, you have to start your build programs well in advance, but we have to apply our minds to the other energy mix that the country has adopted, which include renewable energy and alternative sources of energy. But I also just wanted to respond to your question about whether we're moving in the right direction. I think if we look at the 3-page speech that was read by the President last week, all the pronouncements are correct. I think the big challenge for us as South Africans is how we're going to implement it. And I think one of the programs that we're running as the NBI is one that's readily available right now to large, especially the private sector, to large, medium and small companies, where we can effectively help them to at least cut back on their use. And we have already, through the work we've done, shown that there are opportunities save on the demand, because that's what we're needing to do. We need to save on the demand so that there's energy unleashed for the maintenance programs to happen.
Now, Dave, everyone says that, you know, within a crisis or a challenge when we're going through as individuals or as a nation, it also presents opportunities, and I'm sure you're going to be tapping into that through the conference. What sort of opportunities that the situation that we find ourselves in right now, you know, can we access as a country and as a continent?
I think the primary opportunities start with Val's point about energy efficiency, reducing demand, but at the same time, to increase supply, what we've got to look at are the quick wins. And quite frankly, going with the renewable energy initiatives in the form of wind and solar are the things that can be brought on quickest. If you start to look at other things like coal, gas, or and in particular nuclear, they're all 5 to 9 year programs before you even blink an eye. So those are not going to bring us solutions, but the renewable programs seem to have a shorter turnaround in the 2 to 3 year period. And clearly renewable energy is one of the topics on the agenda. Energy efficiency is. Nuclear is also on the agenda. But the other thing that I think is also quite important on the agenda is the regional interconnection. And there are many people who think that Africa's future energy solution lies in far greater energy interconnection between different countries.
Okay. All right. Val, obviously yesterday was the kickstart of the role of women in energy. We've got a bit of a bite, and then we want to talk about the role that women have got to play. You spoke about how, you know, they run households, and some of them, you know, they've got their own SMMEs, their business people as well, and opportunities that they can have access to. Were those the issues that were tackled within the conference and discussions?
Yes, and I think for me, what came out was that South Africa, probably across the continent as well, we're not moving fast enough in women forward, not just at the household level, but also in the business sector. I think there is a need for us to upscale the ownership of women's role in ownership and management positions in the energy space, and also to diversify the role that women can play in the energy space. I think we concluded that we needed a lot more technical expertise amongst women to participate in the energy space. So our girls should be educated in schools and students to become engineers and other technical missions that are required. But I think we also spoke about mainstreaming energy across different disciplines. That whether you're an HR manager, you should, if we're looking for a sustainable energy future, then we should be recruiting women or HR managers who know what skills they're looking for to take them into a sustainable energy future.
All right. Let's have a look. We spoke to Dr. Ibrahim Mayaki about the role of women in the energy sector.
Now, there are two issues that need that. The first one is access to energy, energy poverty. And in that specific case, women are impacted much more negatively than men because of the structure of our societies, fundamentally in rural areas. And Africa, even if it has strong urbanization rates, is still a rural continent because 70% of its population live in rural areas. And access to modern energy in rural areas is very, very weak. And so women are impacted negatively in that regard. The second aspect is the participation of women in the energy industry. I think it is making some progress in managerial positions, but that progress is still weak. It has to be increased, and this is one of the issues during this conference on women and energy, how on the first hand we can increase access to energy for women in rural areas, and on the second hand, how we can improve the number of women who are in leadership position in the industry sector.
All right, interesting stuff there coming through. Which catchword there, energy poverty. Can you explain what that means?
Energy poverty means that people can either not afford the energy because it's too expensive, or they just don't have access to energy. So it's a dual thing. You either can't afford it, it's there. So in South Africa, for example, one of the things we've seen is an increased concern about energy poverty, not because it's not there, but because people can't afford it. Whereas in other parts of Africa, energy poverty refers to people just not having access to energy.
We see, Africa's growth and involvement in energy in the next 10 years.
Well, I think that we've heard of the Obama support for power generation. So I think just unlocking power generation capacity in Africa can actually change the energy landscape significantly in the next 10 years.
Okay, we can't talk energy without linking it to infrastructure development, the role of the private sector and government working together, the significance of that. How can things be changed from what they've been in the past going forward?
Well, one of the topics that is being explored, well, there are two topics being explored during the week here. One is about the whole issue of infrastructure. There's a specific plenary session on the vision for energy infrastructure in Africa. And the objective of that is to try and find ways to bring government and private partners together. The whole NEPAD planning and program is focusing on that very strongly. And then, of course, there's another project, session on Africa energy projects. And again, that's looking at what projects are either ongoing or are being thought about. And that's being discussed with a combination of government and private sector people.
All right, we're faced with one of the biggest challenges we're faced with as a continent is South Africa's youth unemployment. How do we bring in young people to access some of these opportunities? Are there programs that exist that can be part of? Any of you can answer?
I think there's a need for us to engage with education, with tertiary institutions about what opportunities are. I think what was said at our conference yesterday is that not all the opportunities are direct opportunities because not all infrastructural developments are long-term projects. However, if one thinks, let's just use energy efficiency again as an example. Our experience working in the energy efficiency space is that medium-sized companies were employing facilities managers or energy managers to take stock of how much energy they were using and work on targets to improve, because that is a country objective to reduce by 2030 in our next strategy our use of energy. So to do that, you need people to audit, you need people to measure, to verify. There are all kinds of technical expertise required, and I think that it's a case really of us reaching out, and maybe universities reaching out to us to say what those opportunities are. And a very important part of our discussion in the Women in Energy Conference was the skill sets required. So we really need to be having a conversation about the skill sets, and I think that will unlock the thinking around opportunities for youth.
Okay, well, thanks very much, guys, for chatting to us this morning. We've been speaking to Dave Wright from the South African National Energy Association and also the head of energy at the National Business Initiative, Val Geen. For more information regarding the Indaba, you can go to indaba.com, and that was our discussion for this morning. We're back with more after this break, but right now, pretty ugly. It's entertaining us.
Extra, but say for the next to anybody, I'm the best dressed. Swags effortless to express. I'm fresh, stuck up, flex. Check, power on your marks, get set. I test jets just to jet set. I prep the whip like a vet, yes. Come over, your friends make you fetch. Tattoos on my flesh, check. A bad dude to the death. Death, that's what the feds should expect. You best move, check my neck, step the necklace around my neck, leave you breathless. High in that, close. You gotta ride in that coast.